As the Centre Court MBA Festival always demonstrates, the MBA can be an incredible opportunity to discover the world. Whether you're from New Jersey, from New Mexico, from New Delhi, you get to discover the world and discover the world in your classroom. And that's something that European business schools are very, very good at, as you will see. From the EDHEC Business School, it's a pleasure to welcome Juliana Garcia Estrada, who is currently studying at EDHEC. She had studied marketing at the University of Anahuac in Mexico Norte, has 9 years of experience in entertainment and FCMG industries, including the Walt Disney Company and AB InBev, two global giants. And from the Copenhagen Business School, Shefali Reddy. Shefali graduated last year. She'd studied industrial engineering from Purdue and has 6 years of experience in transportation and logistics with FedEx. Welcome, both of you. It's a pleasure to have you at Centre Court. I just gave the briefest of stories and how you have discovered the world. But Juliana, tell us a little bit about your background and this path that led you to business school at EDHEC.
Thank you, Matt. It was a great introduction. I feel special already. Um, well, you talked a little bit about my past. It's a little bit about the entertainment industry. I work before Disney and ABI. I was in Live Nation. So I've been working in music, and then I moved a little bit to fast consumer goods with the beer, but always in the part of entertainment. And finally, my last job was the Walt Disney Company from the sports vision. So it was like ESPN and Disney Plus, which was great. But there was something missing, Matt, and that is what's important. And the decision I took was if I wanna take a next step in my career and in the next, like to be able to be a good leader and take the next step in the ladder, let's say, I need to do something. And I mean, 9 years working, it's a long time, and you can get like entangled with your ideas, what you think it's right, and there's new concepts and there's new technologies and everything's going like the world is moving so fast. So I said I need to do something and challenge myself beyond only going to school, challenge myself living in a country, learning a new language, and like taking it all to the next level. And that's when my MBA search started. And then I'll leave you hanging on why did I choose a deck?
It's a great place to start because I think you've captured this idea of, things are going really well, but there must be something more. And this very intentional thought of going back to business school. Now, in your case, Shafali, again, working for FedEx, enjoying a very successful career. Tell us about your own personal path that led you to come back to business school in Copenhagen.
Yeah, for sure. So I in like was in a similar boat where I had worked for the same company for 6 years and I worked as an industrial engineer in the logistics industry. Loved it. I moved roles every few years. So I saw different parts of the business, but there was something missing, like essentially the business knowledge that I didn't have. So I was playing around with the idea of getting a specialized master's or an MBA. And so I was doing my research in that manner as well. But then ultimately was like, you know what? I think I need like more general business knowledge to keep moving up the ladder. I knew I liked my industry and I knew I wanted to stay doing something relevant to that. So I thought an MBA would be like the next best step to keep going in that career and climbing the ladder as well.
Right. We talk about something. I mean, you're both successful, and was thinking, the MBA will give me this professional acceleration, next steps, open new doors. Is there also, Shafali, a very personal side to that? You now live in one of the happiest countries in the world, in Denmark. It wasn't that you were unhappy, but just new things to explore.
Yeah, pretty much. I liked my career. I grew up in the US and have lived there my entire life. I moved around within the US, but never had like lived elsewhere. And I knew I always wanted to live abroad at some point. Where it was like kind of up in the air. But then when I was trying to do my research into figuring out how I can actually do that, I determined going to school is like a much better path in doing so because you kind of establish yourself in that country before like jumping straight into the job market. So I thought, okay, I'll go to school abroad. And that's also kind of like a trial run as to if you like living in that country or not. Um, my program is a year, so it's a lot less of time spent away, if that makes sense, if you don't like it. So I thought, okay, maybe a year is a good approach into like approaching that. And then yeah, I think like the program gave me what I was looking for, which we can go into more at later in this point. But yeah, it was not that I was like running away and like leaving the opportunities that I had in the US, but more so like what more can I gain from this international experience in schooling and both like working abroad.
Working with companies, Juliana, that had such an international footprint, was it inevitable that you would look beyond Mexico and France? You know, what is it about Nice? People have been going to Nice for decades for their personal well-being. What was it that drew you to France and to Nice?
I mean, you got the answer right there. And the sun right here. But other than that, I think, and well, you mentioned it, I worked in very international environments, and that was key. Also, like in the personal life, I've always been very driven to understand new cultures. And we live in a globalized world, right? So right now, staying home and just doing that, if you have the possibility, you shouldn't, because it gives us a broader idea to understand different cultures, where we come from, why. So that, and then having worked in companies that are always talking about other markets, talking about like other experiences, like we did this in Asia, we did this in Africa, and you're being so foreigner to that. And then I had some opportunities to work while in the in the companies. I had opportunities to work in a festival in Spain when I was in Live Nation, and then with ABI I worked together with the US. And so when that idea starts growing in your mind, and I was like, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. And finally, well, Nice. There's only good things I can say about Nice. I come from a very warm country, Mexico, and so of course, weather-wise, it's amazing. But for me, it was personally also a choice of French, which I speak, so it was good to have a place where I can speak more. But Nice as a city, it has a very special vibe and soul, and also it's a city with a lot of growth. Um, in terms of all the capitals are really crowded in all over the world. And I think Nice and the Côte d'Azur is becoming more and more of a hub for companies. So it's interesting also to watch that. And for me personally, also moving to a city that was smaller than Mexico City, smaller than when I worked before, it was also a new challenge to understand how you can get more immersed into the culture of France, because in Paris it's so diverse, it's so like big, and it's like cities tend to big cities tend to stay the same in
Hmm.
different countries. And so Nice is like very French. I get to experience and practice my French and go like deep into the culture, but also it's driven and it's new, and there's so many opportunities down here. um and I don't know if I'm going to end here or somewhere else, but at least the work and the companies visits and everything that I've done also with school, which we can tackle more later on, it's also super interesting, because then you realize maybe it's not only Paris, it's not only Berlin, not only Geneva. There's so many places out there that they're still growing, and we should encourage that, right?
Right. Well, we'll talk about, I guess, the Silicon Valley of the Riviera and Sophia Antipolis and tech
Yes.
and all the industry opportunities. Shefali, you'd already moved out of home when you went and did your studies in West Lafayette. Then telling your family, "Hey, I'm going to head to the north of Europe. I'm going to Copenhagen." Even if you're doing accounting exams or you're working through complex balance sheets, did they kind of think that you were on vacation, or have you managed to convince them that this was a serious professional move?
Oh yeah, for to an extent, yes. I think because my parents immigrated to the US and then chose to do schooling in the US, I think for them it just kind of makes sense to stay in the US and like grow your career that way. So I kind of went about the approach of like I would like to try this, and if it works out, it'll work out. And if not, then I can move back to the US. So it was kind of like, okay, give me a chance. I'll try this kind of approach. And then also like the selling point of like Copenhagen Business School is like a well-known school in the Nordics, and lots of alumni have very successful careers. The alumni network is pretty strong in that area. So I think those like features kind of appeal to them both in that sense, and then like the academics, and like the teaching method and things like that. I think my mom came to visit me like over the summer and like got to get a feel for the school as well. So I think like that also, like, yeah, it's a well-known school in that area. So I think that helped ease that a little bit.
Right. We talk about Scandinavian culture and without falling into clumsy stereotypes, a sense of well-being, very modest. You know, they're not shouting from the rooftops, and yet, you know, Copenhagen is an extraordinary place to be. Is there that level of cultural adaptation? Was it easy, you know, showing up on the first day of class and settling into life in Copenhagen?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're open to like the culture of the area, I think it's quite easy to settle in a little bit. I think this program is a little bit more unique in the sense that it's very international. So that's kind of what I was looking for personally. I wanted to be able to learn from peers from all over the world. So I don't think the program per se, like sitting in class, is extremely Scandinavian, but just like living your life and like networking and stuff like that, that's when you start to feel the real cultural aspect and like just simple things like biking to class, like that type of thing where it's like very Scandinavian. So it's not super difficult. I think you just have to be open and willing to take it all in.
You can just imagine the list that says, you know, tuition fees, health insurance, books, and a laptop. Oh, and you need a bicycle too. It's
Yeah,
almost standard
would be
for any
nice
of
to
them.
have. Yeah.
And Juliana, if we go back to the first day of class, and I think what, 30 nationalities among the 70 students, uh, meeting your other classmates, you can think about, well, it's going to be very international, but in reality, what was that moment like?
Well, I felt we could solve the world just there, all of us together. I think I agree with Shifali, what I was looking for, and I think it differentiates for MBAs in other places that are not Europe, the internationality that this brings. Because not every country offers the MBAs as much as Europe and the US, for example, or Canada. So this and having the opportunity to meet 30 people, sorry, there are 70 people, but from 30 different nationalities at the beginning, and I think it's natural inertia. You go to your groups, right? So Indians, Latins, Americans, Europeans, like you start hanging out. But I am a that is personality wise. I'm very like extrovert, and I really like asking questions to people like randomly. So I was here before the course started, so I knew a little bit also already about Nice. And so I was like, "Hey, how are you enjoying Nice?" Right? Like opening up a little bit of the conversation. But it's definitely and I see, and it's part of the experience that some people react differently to meeting new cultures. Maybe I've traveled a little bit a lot before. So I kind of like knew a little bit and could engage. And maybe there's people who's more less extrovert or and more introvert or more reserved on their comments. And you also need to learn to respect that, right? And be open and listen and learning. So the first day I remember I talked to a girl that I already knew because we met like a couple of days before. And we were like, okay, we're not going to talk to each other because if not, we're going to stick together. Let's try to mingle. And just ran into like people from all over. Where are you from? What are you doing here? What brought you to Nice? And when you realize you're all in the same situation, the I want to stay with my group of like Latins, or in my case, the Latin crew. It's easier to break because everybody's facing the same things, right? Everybody is my I don't know, my landlord is not answering. Hey, have you already got your phone? Is it working? Do you have a bank account? What about the like insurance and all that? So you can all work. It becomes like a net. And today, I would say like my cohort is my family here, and we believe in each other. We trust each other. We do not compete, but more like we form groups of aid of like we're gonna make it. And I think that's the beauty of engaging into an international school, engaging into an MBA. The age also, like we're in different stages in our lives and priorities are different. So it's great. It's great.
Mm. Well, we should always take on the landlord as a community or as a group. But Shefali, you're also taking on accounting exams. You've got the core curriculum. You'll be thinking about electives. Is it important to then prioritize? Because presumably with clubs, activities, everything that you're packing into this intensive 1 year, there are more things to do than there are hours in the day.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the challenges in doing a year-long program. I think going into it, you kind of know what you're signing up for. We're in classes pretty consistently throughout the week and then throughout the year as well. So that, like, if you're going from like a 9 to 5 job to something like this, it can feel kind of jarring almost because now you have extra like schoolwork to do at the end of the day. And on top of that, you want to be networking. You want to be like attending events that the school is having and things like that. So I think it's really important. Like for me, I know that I'm someone who, if I need to put a little bit more time into studying a little bit, so that means taking away from like maybe like a networking event, or maybe I prioritize a networking event because it's in the industry that I want to go to. So that's more important to me at the moment. So I think balancing it that way is very helpful. And then like our class is very small, so with about like 47 of us. So it's quite nice to be able to rely on them
Mm.
for like was said earlier, like landlord issues or classwork. So if you need help with class, it's a lot easier just with that smaller cohort, which is why I was looking for that as well. So it's a mix of like making sure your priorities in order and like knowing why you decide to do your MBA. And like that helps you prioritize a little bit better. And then also like relying on your network, like whether it be your classmates or your network outside of class.
Right. And we've been talking earlier about, Copenhagen is top ranked for ESG, themes of sustainability. Was that something that you were specifically looking for, or that other of your classmates felt, CBS would be a great place to explore those different topics?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why I chose the program. It's something that I had like a little bit of exposure to working, but not like very strict exposure to it. So it's something that I wanted to just like be in that environment and get to know what that means in that different context. And then also looking at it from like a European lens because it looks different than in the US. And then our classmates are as well, like quite a few of them have chosen this program for not just the sustainability aspect of the program, but also like the alumni and being in Copenhagen and like the opportunities that presents. There is a concentration that you can pick for the program. One of them, there's 4 different ones, but one of them is sustainability or governance and sustainability. That's one I was interested in. So that kind of goes deeper into that. And that's something you kind of like opt into through the program. So opportunities are there. So that's kind of why I picked the program as well.
I guess the Nice campus, Juliana, there are PhDs studying finance. It's something the school does very well. There are entrepreneurs in Nice or at Station F in Paris. And then, of course, we talked about tech that's on your doorstep. Do you feel that you needed to know what you wanted to do after the MBA? Or is there, even in the 10 months, the time to explore and look at new opportunities?
I think you have to have a goal in mind. Like you actually do need to know why are you choosing this. And ideas might vary. Like there's no right or wrong. Any decision is the right one, but do need to know like what do you want to get out of it. But it can change, and that's the beauty about it, right? And again, I feel connected to what Shifali is saying because uh, I started with a mindset of doing leadership. We have like different again, you can choose from different options, and I was aiming for leadership in my mindset. That was it, and then well, EDHEC is pretty great at entrepreneurship, finance, as you mentioned, tech, and also sustainability. They are really into that, and I shifted and I said, well, I was thinking of this, but with this now with the actual courses taking place and the actual like movement of the school, I realized like, wait, I can take a different journey and it's okay. It aligns in a different way to what I was looking for, right? still see my goal there, but it's a new way to attain it. And I think that's the beauty of it, because that means also that you're growing, and that maybe what I thought that I needed in leadership has been fulfilled by other courses that I was not expecting. And now I can get to try on new things and challenge myself in a different subject. So I think that is very encouraging. And I I'm really excited because school has provided us so many different ideas, projects, proposals, and hubs and clubs, and you can like join and be a part of, and engage a little bit on everything, and so you can find your journey, even if it changed a little bit of what you had in mind at first, and life never ceases to surprise you, right?
And the clubs, maybe guest speakers, company visits, are they all then contributing to that exploration and new ideas?
Completely, completely. I personally joined the debate club. I'm also in the basketball team. Uh, like things that I care. I also in the entrepreneurship, of course, because it's something. And we visit Station F, which, as you mentioned, EDHEC has a hub there. But also, we tomorrow we will receive the CFO from Booking, who's going to tell us about like the strategy of growth. Today there was the guys of Amazon. That after this I'm gonna go meet again, and we went to visit the hub of Amazon here in Nice. So it's pretty broad, and then you start saying, okay, like there's a whole world, because also when you're in an industry, you kind of become a little bit like, this is what I know, this is what I want to do, and maybe steering out of that is hard. But once you're in an ABA and it opens your vision, and you're like, whoa, there's a lot more that maybe I was not seeing. I'm becoming a more holistic professional, right? I have a lot more less gaps than when I started, but also I'm also realizing that there might be things that I've never questioned, that I never wonder if would like to explore, and now I want to explore. Sustainability being one of them. And in my case in particular, like I didn't know much about it, and now I don't know how I didn't know about it, like it's so important, and that's part of the journey. It's great.
Well, when you meet the boss of Amazon later on today, don't be shy. I don't think that will be an issue. But no, let me stay with shyness as a characteristic. Perhaps not being shy, but being more reserved. As you think, Shefali, about technical skills, analytical skills, the leadership program that you've been on, are there soft skills? Do you look at yourself and say, "Wow, my self-confidence a year later, that things that you see in yourself that have really developed in the way that you interact with people?"
Yeah, I think I am quite soft-spoken and like shy, I guess, in nature. So I think I wanted to get out of that a little bit more. I think being in my role previously, not necessarily that I wasn't building these skills, but I think just being more in a technical role, I didn't have exposure to the opportunities that it could bring. So that's kind of what I was looking for through the MBA as well. And then I think just being one, like you have exposure to all these different events and you have opportunities to put yourself out there that are not very like intense in a way, and they're kind of like test runs to just how you can present yourself in real life. That, and then in combination with just learning from my peers and like how they approach leadership has been really insightful. I haven't been around this many people who are so passionate about like the same thing in a very long time. So I think having that aspect as well has helped quite a bit. I think I still do characterize myself as someone who's soft-spoken, but in a way that I can kind of like leverage that to be successful and be a leader.
Mm. You remind me of, for Centercourt, we've done an interview with a Stanford MBA who says it's so important to amplify or focus on your strengths. Of course, there are things that you want to improve, but those are core strengths. So can you turn something like that into a superpower so that then, people, the way that they listen to you, or, choosing your moment to then share an analysis or a piece of information, do you think that you've become more confident in how you use that discrete superpower?
Yeah, I think so. I think I used to be a little bit more reserved in like speaking up about my opinions and like things like that. And I think gaining the confidence through the program is helpful in like being able to advocate for myself in like a more professional setting than a school setting. And I think I was quite like a studious person in undergrad, and so I was relying upon that to kind of get forward. But I think a lot of what makes you successful at work is how you present yourself and are you confident and are you a leader? So I think it's like a quiet superpower. I wouldn't say like I was going into the program should be like this brand new version of myself. I don't think that's realistic or true to yourself. But I think being able to kind of like leverage the skills from the program and like apply that to my own leadership style has helped quite a bit.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say this as we go halfway through, but some of these center court videos are watched by about 250,000 people. And look at you, fantastic. Whether it's confidence, perhaps structured career advice, the Career Management Center, Juliana, and also presumably an alumni network that can also be an incredible resource as you think about different industries, new careers. How do you get to benefit from their experience?
Well, I think EDHEC is pretty strong on that. The career center, the network is huge. Actually, most of the people that we see or that we interact with in companies are ex-alumni. So it's good because then you're like closing the circle, right? You're creating your own small network. I think it's also very personal, like whatever you want to do, again, your goal, the opportunities are going to be there, but you need to be smart on how to take them and which ones to take and how to approach it. The school is going to put opportunities there, and then it's on you to build on that, right? I feel for me personally, I want to move into the sports world, and so I know the companies I want to target, and I've looked like with the EDHEC alumni who's there, who's in that company, and I've reached out, and the answer it's always like, oh, you're from EDHEC, like of course, let's sit and chat, right? They're not gonna offer you a job. They're not gonna be like, hey, yeah, sure, you're from EDHEC, here's your job, not for sure, but they open the door to let's speak. And in my case, I want to learn more about the industry in Europe because I might work in Mexico, but it's not the same, right? So learning about that and having the opportunity to chat to people, to connect, to see and to understand better the industry so that you can present yourself better after the MBA with stronger like ground and more confidence as because you already have like this backup of I've studied, I know, and I know people that work there that have grounded me to understand how the industry works. I think it's great. I do leverage myself. Me personally, I put a stop to it because the school put out an opportunity for me, well, for all of us, and I won the opportunity. I'm going to Shanghai for 6 more months. So my journey changed a little bit, but again, that's part of the MBA and that's part of how it never ceases to surprise you.
Well, this, I mean, whether exploring Shanghai and China, Shefali, the Centre Court is not a political platform, but plastic straws are back. There's an executive order that says plastic straws are okay again. As you look at life through the lens of Denmark and the Nordics, do you feel that themes of diversity and inclusion, ESG, and the environment, that in a sense what they're advocating is more important than ever? It's a big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I would think so. I think from like an ESG perspective, I think Copenhagen is one of the biggest places for ESG. So I think it's like built into life almost. So I think it's quite easy to practice as like an individual there, um, like living your life, I guess. And then in terms of diversity and inclusion, I think those opportunities are there. Companies have their DEI initiatives and things like that here as well. And then I also think that like there's a lot of really big companies in Denmark, like really big name brand ones. So I think that brings a lot of not only like diverse and international talent, but people who want to be in those diverse and international spaces. So I think there is like a want almost to kind of learn from that and gain insight into that as well. But yeah, that's a big question, I guess. Yeah.
If we go back maybe 20 years, Juliana, there would have been 28, maybe 30% women in MBA classrooms, whether it's in Europe or North America. but you're in an MBA classroom with more than 50% women. Does that make a difference in that sense of you're investing in yourself, your career, your leadership path? Does it feel good to have such a strong balance in the classroom?
It is amazing. I'm a super advocate on the D&I. I come from industries usually managed by men. So when I came here, I was like very straightforward about this topic in particular and about how women can build and be in different like positions and be CEOs, and it's a thing, right? And I've learned that having a cohort with it's the first year that we're more women than men. We're 51, 49, so it's pretty close. But still, as you mentioned, like 30 years ago, this was unbelievable, unthinkable. And we are that generation. We are the women that are empowering other women to, yes, we can and we will. And I feel great because the guys in the cohort have that mindset, right? You have to have that mindset as well to actually be able to embrace the change. I think we have a lot, and we could enter this topic very deeply. There's a long way to go, but definitely for me, the decision of choosing EDHEC was the diversity, both in cultural, religious, race, but also in the diversity of men and women, right? And I feel very strong and very passionate that I can stand there and say my opinion. And there's someone, and the first week of school, one of the guys, because I shared one of my experiences working in Mexico, he came to me and he said, you know, Juliana, I was wondering if I could like have a coffee with you because where I come from, like I've never witnessed anything like this, and I really want to know more. And I want to know what are the signs so that I can prevent it. And so we engaged into a coffee of like 5 hours about like dynamics and cultural differences and why it's not only a women impulsing other women, it's all women, men, everybody should be like fighting for equality, right? For all of us to be equal, not only men and women, but for everybody. And I think that has a very strong position on that, which it's something that I really do feel like very touched about.
Yeah. Well, both your schools, they have very smart people at the front of the classroom that are curating discussions, bringing in your different insights. But it strikes me that you're learning as much over coffee with a classmate and that curiosity. Shefali, you're now a year out of the program. And as you think it back about the experience and the full-time MBA at Copenhagen, maybe something that wasn't immediately apparent during the program, but a year out, it's like, hey, that's changed in me, or now I get to use this. Have you, coming a year out, seen things that didn't have an immediate impact, but you see them in you now?
Um, Sorry, just to clarify, I am still in the program, but it's
Ah,
class of
okay.
2024 to 2025. But I'll still answer
Got
your
it.
question. I think similar to Juliana's point, there's like little everyday interactions that you have with people that you probably would not have been able to get elsewhere. So just like learning about people's backgrounds and learning like how are they tackling different points of discrimination in the workplace because we are such an international cohort. How are we tackling like job hunting and like internship hunting and things like that? So I think it's been very valuable kind of just learning everyday little cultural nuances from each other that I probably would not have gotten otherwise.
And next steps, if we see you again at Centre Court a year, 2 years from now, Shefali, what might that look like?
Next steps, I would like to still work in Denmark. I think it's important to just like leverage those connections and that network that I've built for myself at this point. And I think like that's kind of what I've always wanted to live and work internationally and see what that looks like from a different country other than the US. And then after that, I don't know. It could be anywhere.
And it's a big deal. I think in Denmark, automatically you're entitled to stay for 3 years after the MBA to be able to explore those different options.
Yeah, so when we were getting our student visa, it's automatically for an additional 3 years afterwards. So that's like an opportunity to stay in the country to just kind of figure out what you would like to do afterwards. And yeah, it's very nice in that sense because it is automatic, unlike some other countries that have similar visa processes.
This idea, EDHEC is preparing you not just for this first job of you come out of the MBA, but something that's going to help you on the second or the third job, 5 years, 8 years out of the program. Juliana, perhaps the same question. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah. Well, interesting question. As I mentioned, I want to go to sports. So my D&I, I'm gonna connect to everything that we talked about, I think, at this point. I'm heading to China, and also because I wanted to deepen my knowledge on a market that is very foreign to me, which is Asia. So after that, the school is gonna give me like a business negotiation in Asia, like additional diploma. And with that, I want to come back and I want to work in sports in diversity and inclusion because I feel like sports is a field that should take the, like take the first step and make a clear change because sports unify people. And for me, it's very clear, and I feel it in the music as well when I was in the music industry. So like that is like the dream to be able to say women, men, disabled people, whatever, we're all in the same level and we should be able to see that, which is also part of like the ESGs, like the whole change that that we as new leaders should be impulsing. So that is like the dream from here to 5 years. We'll see. Dream places would be Geneva because there's, well, not Geneva, but Switzerland because there's the house of like FIFA, the Olympics, and a lot of like the hubs for sports, which is also what you need to know, right? If you are looking for an industry and you want to target an industry, also, and a piece of advice down there, look which country is doing that. And I think Shivali just said like she wants sustainability and ESG is important for her. She wants to do it, and she's staying in a place that's a leader that for that, which is Denmark. And I would have to move to somewhere like Switzerland to do that, or maybe an ONG. That would also be very inspiring for me. And always thinking of like how can I live the world a little bit better than when I came here. So that's my dream personally. And also being an entrepreneur, but maybe not outside, but more of an entrepreneur. And then it's an entrepreneur in the school, no, in the work where you're at. And that is what I want to impulse and what I want to bring to the world. And we'll see.
Both of you remind me what I love about Centre Court so much. We could have read your stories on a website, an article somewhere, but there's an energy and there's a generosity just as you share these different experiences. So perhaps a final question for viewers from all over the world that I guess were in your position a year or two ago as you were thinking about next steps, business school, heading to Europe. Advice that you would have, Shefali, for anyone that's considering an MBA and maybe Copenhagen in particular?
Yeah, kind of building off that last point, I would say really think about why you want to get an MBA. And because it's quite a large financial investment and like time commitment, so it's not something you should be like taking quite lightly. But do you want to switch your job? Do you want to stay in the same industry? Do you just want to change locations? So just like really thinking about what you really want out of it can help you figure out what school you want to go to as well. For me in particular, I knew I wanted to live in Denmark and be close to that sustainability aspect, but then also having the ability to work in a more English-friendly country, or a country that has bigger companies in the logistics industry, which is what I want to do afterwards. So, especially if you're like moving with your family, like this is quite a hefty decision to make. So just be quite thorough in why you want to make this decision.
Juliana, as Shefali has said, it's a big investment in time. It's a big investment in money. It's a big investment, but worth it from what you've both shared. So your advice to anyone thinking about making that investment in themselves with an MBA and heading to EDHEC?
Doing an MBA changed my life. And I think change is always good. Change put you out there and show you how strong you can be. So I think it's great. I agree, of course, you need to have a goal in mind. And as I mentioned at the beginning, what do you want to get out of it? And it doesn't have to be like something really, really huge, but you do have to have something that you want to get out of it and have that clear. EDHEC for me was the perfect school for many reasons, including cohort size, diversity, um, equality, and whatever we've been talking about. And I felt a connection with it, and I think that is the important thing. Connect when you're speaking and the processes, all of the processes in the schools. You have to talk to the like to the admissions people. You have to talk to the administration, right? And you can contact alumni and talk to them and see if you connect with that. For me in EDHEC, I connected day one. I luckily had the opportunity to meet the person that recruited me randomly, and we connected. We made such a we had the same mindset. We wanted to achieve the same things. We felt like in this place I was gonna feel at home, and I do. And it's not because it's Nice. Nice was a secondary for me decision. It was great that it was Nice, but it was not the main. The main was the school. The main is what I had in mind, and I wanted to be a better leader. That was my goal. And then I saw the program, the leadership that they have in many aspects, and then the people. For me, I'm an extrovert. I connect a lot with energy and the people, and when I talk, so that was key for me. I think it's a great school. It's very challenging. Also, I think we're always smiling and we put the best face here, but it's important to put that disclaimer on. It is challenging. It's a very fast program, just as Shifali's. Um, you have to be on your toes the whole time. I've been working for 9 years. I lost the school pace, and now I had to build on that. And my younger friends, they have that ability because they've been closer to school. So also like having people learning for so much, you have to have the hunger to learn. You have to have the hunger to come out a better person. And if you have that hunger and it's tickling in your head, then do it. Then do it with that in mind. And if it's in EDHEC, reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you.
Well, you've both traveled thousands of miles with that self-belief, created a home from home, an extended family, and we were very fortunate to be able to share that with our community at Centre Court. So, Shefali, Juliana, thank you very much for being with us.